29, 2012 is called to order. Welcome to everyone present and to our television viewers. All items that we vote on have been posted as required by state law. This meeting is being televised live and will be replayed throughout the next 2 weeks. Please check the board website for replay times. We are going to get started with our superintendent's report. Superintendent Smith.
Thank you. And actually, we're starting with something that is really cool, and numbers of people are here to be recognized tonight, which is our exceptional new track and field at Roosevelt High School. And so this is our district's first NCAA standard track. It was completed last month, and it's now the pride of the St. John's community and of this district. And we owe this exceptional project to a great many people who are part of making it happen over a great many years, and a lot of persistence and a lot of ingenuity and creativity and sweat equity, and it was an awesome everybody come and make it happen project. And actually, before I do individual recognitions, I'm going to play a short bit of footage of the homecoming, which inaugurated the track, and it was an awesome event where students from all of the feeder schools came and participated in the Rough Riders to Be in inaugurating this track. So can we go ahead and see the footage, and then I'll recognize our individuals.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are looking at a project worth over $1 million and the envy of college and high school programs in the Northwest. Come on, let's give them some applause as they make their way around. We are an international community. We embrace everyone from everywhere. Welcome to Roosevelt High School. We are forever indebted to your dedication and commitment to our students. But we want you to know that you are appreciated in an Olympic kind of way. Love, Roosevelt students and families. Thank you.
Please welcome the 1990, 91, 92 Roosevelt High School girls 400 and 1600 relay team. They will then pass the to the present Roosevelt Rough Riders. David. So they are all running together, and they are going to pass it on to, we are pleased to welcome the future Rough Riders who will join the Roosevelt alumni and current students as we cross the finish line and officially dedicate this new track and field complex. All right, go Rough Riders and run us to your marks. Go Rough Riders.
So we have a proclamation to the people who made it happen that we'd like to present to you this evening. In September 2012, the Roosevelt High School track was completed, which marked the end of the Theodore Roosevelt Athletic Complex renovation. Over the last several years, groups of generous and tireless community members have stepped forward to help Portland Public Schools complete the long-awaited, much-anticipated athletic complex. Because of the efforts of the Roosevelt business and school community, as well as that of local and national businesses, Roosevelt now boasts an NCAA track, as well as a beautiful synthetic turf for student and community use. Roosevelt High School is truly the jewel of St. John's, and our thanks go out to, and we're going to individually present one to each one of you, for your support and generosity to Portland Public Schools. Good citizens are the riches of the city, and we are so grateful for your involvement and support of Roosevelt High School. And I will say I was able to be at the Roosevelt Homecoming Alumni Dinner, and this was like such a huge point of pride and celebration for all of the Roosevelt alumni who attended that evening too. It was really wonderful to see what an awesome kind of community energy something like this builds, so truly thank you. So first, and Cameron Von Tyler, will you come on up and help me present the plaques? Dave Anderson of Anderson Construction, And Dave is a true community hero, and this has been told over and over again by multiple people. He gave personally and provided labor from his business. His expertise and generosity enabled us to build the best track possible. He always said yes when we asked for help. We are indebted to you. And I'm going to ask you guys, stay up here because we're going to take a picture of the whole crew once we call each one out individually. Norm Daniels, who is an alumni of Roosevelt, and it has always been his vision to see this project through. He's been involved in every step of the field and track. His generosity and creative ideas for partnerships have been invaluable. Thank you, Norm. And when I talk about persistence, I mean it right here in Norm Daniels. This is our persistence. Micah Johnson, on behalf of St. John's Safeway. It's such a necessity for us to band together to help our neighborhoods thrive. Through Safeway's generosity, we've been able to complete the track and enhance for all the community to enjoy. Thank you, Safeway. Kathy Webb, on behalf of Nike and the Bowerman Foundation. And again, Nike all the way through this project, man, and just like helping us pull through really points where sometimes you think it's going to happen and sometimes you don't. Nike helped on every one of our field projects. We're so grateful for their partnership and their generosity to the district. None of our high school fields to date would exist without Nike's help in planning and funding and help us figure out how the whole thing is going to come together. So thank you to you and to Nike for all you do for Portland Public Schools. Craig Cheek, who's not able to be here tonight. Craig has been one of the backbones of the funding for this project. Through his personal support and professional support from Nike, Craig has helped to make this dream a reality. We're so grateful to him for all he's done for the students of Roosevelt, so please pass that on. Michael Bergman, who has provided track expertise from start to finish. His thoughtful approach to what was needed and how to get us to the finish line is much appreciated. Having someone on our team who has the track experience that Michael brings to this project was invaluable. Thank you, Michael. Kevin Brown, behind every great athlete is someone who wants them to succeed not only in athletics but in their education, and that person is Kevin Brown. Kevin's been helping to tutor athletes at Roosevelt to ensure their success on and off the field. And Kevin, thank you for your support. Mike Shrunk, who all of us know, he was not able to be here with us tonight, but there's so much to say about Mike. He's been another one I would call a backbone of this project. He never says no when we've asked him to help, and in almost every case, he's there before we ask. He loves Roosevelt, and his dedication to this project and lifelong support of this community has been a gift to all of us. We are so much richer for his contributions to the city of Portland and to Portland Public Schools, so let's do a big call out for Mike. Rich Record also could not be here, and again, he was there through every part of this project, putting countless hours of sweat equity into the Roosevelt project. We are so grateful to him for all he's done to see the project through to fruition. And again, when I talk about creativity and just like how do you figure out how you make something out of nothing, Rich was totally a how do you pull things together kind of guy. So big call out to Rich. Charlene, who is not with us tonight because she is receiving a Spirit of Portland Award at another event, but Charlene, who you saw in her gold lame that she wears, which also had matching boots, if you couldn't tell that in the film clip. But oh man, talk about Spirit of Roosevelt. She has been an incredible, and Greg Newman, come on up, Greg, who have been an incredible leadership team in this chapter for Roosevelt High School. And so I will say every great school needs vision and guidance, and the two of you have just been a fabulous team along with the rest of your teammates. We've been so supportive of this project and of just making sure that we actually had it happen and put together a wonderful inaugural event that was just so inspiring and really had every member of the community there to really help just know this is going to be a big community builder. So thank you to all of you. And just thanks for being such a great team. We want to stand up and get a picture of all of you. Thank you for making this happen. We're going to pull into this little middle part and do our, you guys are coming around to do a picture. I think they can just gather around. Willamette Valley Tech Track and Field. Come on up here. The funding partner, and I don't know how we didn't get you in there, so thank you so much. Come on in here. And board members, come on around. We're going to do a little interspersed. We're going to kind of get behind you guys. So that maybe tuck in behind to get these guys. Okay. We'll be the people who do yeah.
Right to have a prop to hang in front of myself. Kathy, I'll photograph if you want. How about we put you in the front row? I just switched back.
Are you ready? Ready. 1, 2, 3. A few more.
You guys, thank you so much.
A few years ago, you were the new merchandise manager. Really? I was with some.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Of course. Yes. I know they have. Thanks so much. Okay, so thank you all for being with us for that wonderful ceremony. And as I said, Charlene is off receiving the Spirit of Portland Award, and the other group that's receiving a Spirit of Portland Award tonight is our Grant High School Community Garden team. So, yahoo! And as they were leaving, they were our team was just saying, let's get the rest of these fields done. And we had another event that was one that was a Grant and Lincoln crosstown clash, which was essentially the boys and girls soccer teams wanted to beat the state record in terms of numbers of attendees at a soccer match, and they did. 5,000 in attendance at a high school soccer match on October 9th during a men's and women's match on the Lincoln field. But part of it, and you will see that people were wearing red and blue T-shirts provided by Nike as a fundraiser. So these were limited edition. They sold out, and the proceeds, there you see all the blues. And in a minute, they were great games, but it was a fundraiser for the Grant Field. So all the turnout that day went to go towards the supporting the Grant Field, with the idea that next year's Crosstown Clash will be on the Grant Field. So, and actually we had Matt Morton and his family, Bobby Reagan, Ruth Atkins, Nick Fish, Grant Principal Vivian Orland, Lincoln Principal Peyton Chapman, and the Nike School Innovation Fund Julia Edwards there to cheer on the team. So it was a really great event, and we hope an annual challenge. So lots of energy there. We had 13 schools receive the Healthier U.S. School Challenge Awards this year. So these we had top federal food officials who honored teachers and students at Lent K-8 school. And Lent was one of 13 of our schools to receive this award, which is part of First Lady Michelle Obama's Let's Move campaign to end childhood obesity within a generation. And what this award recognizes is schools that have taken voluntary steps to create healthier environments by promoting nutrition and physical activity. 4% of schools nationwide have received this award. Joining Lent in this honor for Portland Public Schools were Arleta K-8, Cesar Chavez K-8, Fabian K-8, George Middle School, Gray Middle School, James John K-5, Lane Middle School, Lee K-8, Marysville K-8, Vernon K-8, Vestal K-8, and Woodlawn K-8. So we were really excited about this honor, and we want to thank Oregon State University Extension, the Growing Gardens Program, and Multnomah County Health Department, who've been key partners in this effort. So actually, one other acknowledgement I want to make is to math and science teacher Carla Osterley, who won an Outstanding Classroom Science Teacher Award from the Oregon Science Teachers Association, and teacher Aaron Thomas, who got a $1,700 grant from Chevron and Donors Choose for science equipment, and Whole Foods, who gave Vestal a $2,000 grant to support its school community garden. So those are all nice recognition of our teachers. Okay, so now an update on our enrollment, which we always kind of wait until we have our official enrollment update. And I'm happy to report this was another year of growth for Portland Public Schools. Our enrollment was up by 200 students, from last year to 47,508 students, which makes 4 years of growing enrollment and an increase of nearly 1,500 students since the 08-09 school year. And again, the trend is at the lower grades, so we're basically doing our demographic wave and we're building up from the lower grades, but excited to have double-digit growth actually in the early grades. Another film clip we're going to share with you is our participation in the Great Oregon Shakeout, which is our earthquake safety, earthquake preparedness, and we went over and had the students at Roosevelt share with us their experience of doing earthquake preparedness. So we'll go ahead and share that film clip with you.
Hi, I'm Charlene Williams, and I'm excited to start my 3rd year here on the campus at Roosevelt as the campus principal. I'm excited to welcome our school board members and safety officials, community members, and Roosevelt alum on this Oregon Great Shakeout Day. Today, Roosevelt students and staff will conduct an earthquake drill. In Portland, schools take earthquake safety seriously, given our seismic risks. A federal grant has helped all schools develop easy-to-use emergency plans to help us respond effectively in man-made or natural disasters, like an earthquake. So we have our emergency school response plan that we'll be following and implementing today, and we will also conduct earthquake drills each year along with our monthly fire drills. Partners like Home Depot and Rose City Movers have also helped us to put together Go Kits. So in our Go Kits, you'll find resources for our safety drills.
The safety of our students is a top priority, and I appreciate the work that teachers, principals, school districts, staff have done to plan for and practice the responses to emergencies. We know from experience that it can literally save lives. We saw how much this makes a difference during the fire at Marysville, when students and teachers were able to exit in a safe and orderly manner without anyone getting hurt.
This is a unique opportunity for us as a community, and it is critically important as a community that during a moment of crisis or catastrophe that we have safe places to gather as a community, and our neighborhood schools are those places, and we want them to be safe for the community and for our children.
The best investment in our public safety efforts are our children, and getting our children a strong education in a safe place, a comfortable working environment is the best investment we can make.
Roosevelt students and staff will conduct an earthquake drill.
Like a table. Like a table. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to go ahead and practice what we would do in the case.
They will receive 10 minutes of instruction, conduct duck, cover, hold, and drill.
This is an earthquake drill. Right now, drop, cover, and hold. Drop to the floor now. During a large earthquake, the ground might jerk strongly and knock you down.
And then practice an evacuation of the building.
And the value that we place in the community, because our schools are the focal point for us all. Our schools are where we turn to in times of emergency, and it's very important that we focus on what we're doing here today. And I want to thank you.
And actually, we had a federal readiness emergency management grant that over the last 2 years we've developed emergency plans for every school and had an opportunity to do training for emergency preparedness with every school. And what you just saw there, our schools do an earthquake drill specifically twice a year. So thank you to Roosevelt for doing that demonstration for us. I know we're kind of getting a bunch of Roosevelt tonight, but they've done some cool stuff. The next thing we wanted to highlight for you is the local affiliate of Univision, which is our Spanish language media company, is partnering with PPS to support our goal that 100% of our current kindergartners are ready to learn by the end of third grade, because early literacy is a powerful predictor of future success in school and life. So they've created a public service announcement talking about the importance of reading daily with your child and using your school or local library as a resource. So we're going to play for you their PSA, public service announcement.
Porque tú siempre serás el primer maestro de tus hijos, es importante que le dediques al menos 15 minutos diarios para leer con ellos en voz alta. Deja que tu hijo escoja el libro, vean y platiquen de las fotos y pasen un rato divertido. Leer todos los días les ayudará a tus hijos en la escuela, porque la lectura empieza en casa y tú siempre serás su primer maestro. Visita la biblioteca de tu escuela o tu biblioteca local.
And those were students from Beach School that you saw. So we want to thank Beach School for participating and thank Univision for working with us on doing these kind of public service announcements. They're totally cool. So in great partnership with Univision. Principal for Almost a Day. This was our 12th year of Principal for Almost a Day, and All Hands Raised, formerly the Portland Schools Foundation, sponsors this every year and this year for all the districts serving the city of Portland. And we have business leaders who come and partner with a principal to learn about what goes on in a day in the life of a principal and in a school. So the slideshow just shows some of the business partners who came and were part of Principal for a Day this year. We had more than 45 of our principals hosting a principal. I also had a superintendent for the day, Lisa Sedlar, who's the president and CEO of New Seasons, which was really fun to do. But I want to thank our principals and our board members, Trudy Sargent, Greg Belisle, Matt Morton, Pam Knowles, and Bobby Regan, who also went and participated and visited schools in other districts, which I think has been a really great feature of this as well. And then also a thank you to our elected officials, Multnomah County Commissioner Loretta Smith, State Senators Richard Devlin and Chip Shields, State Representative Alyssa Kenny Geyer and Margaret Doherty, as well as all of the business leaders who participated in this day. It's a really awesome opportunity to get to just exchange ideas and also get feedback on what we're doing, hear ideas from the business community. It's an amazing event, and people come together for lunch at the end of the day and share their stories of what they learned over the course of the day. So I want to thank All Hands Raised for continuing to organize this every year. Comcast and the Blazers are primary sponsors who make it happen and host us all at the end of the day, and just a really valuable experience. I don't know if any board members want to share anything about your days. No? Okay. It was a great day. It's a cool day. Thanks. Okay, and the last thing in my report, I'm going to invite Michelle Riddell and Bonnie Gray to come on up, and we're going to give you a report on our higher assignment and transfer policy update. So,
good evening. So we wanted to update you on where we are with higher assignment and transfer this year. And just as a reminder, back in 2009, Human Resources and Portland Association of Teachers had an agreement to help create an internal sort of interview and select process that would assist teachers and principals in having more choice in when they were unassigned and getting opportunities to be interviewed. In addition, it also had some other incentives that we continue to use. This year, we wanted to show you the data that we have, and it's good news this year. And part of that good news, as a result of that additional FTE that we received, really did help us. We had 230 unassigned teachers originally, and we had 32% of them that were interviewed and selected. The other category you'll see is an increase. It's 45% in the other, and that it was primarily made up of teachers who were able to return to their building that they were unassigned from. So 89% of that category went back to their building, and that was mostly a result of that additional FTE. So that was good. We reduced our placement percentage, and that's always, we do the interview and select process. We give lots of opportunities for interviewing and posting, and at a point in time we have to move forward and get folks settled so that we can go to external hiring. And this year we reduced the percent of placement to 23% over 30% the year before. So that was good. The other piece that we look really hard at is our Zone 1 schools. We had a commitment to try to minimize putting any placements into our Zone 1 schools, and this year we were able to make a lot of progress. We partnered with regional administrators and principals, and this year we reduced those placements to 5, and last year we were at 25. So significant improvement there, which was very good. And then I'll have Bonnie talk about our hiring and recruitment strategies that we did this year.
So in 2011-2012, we had a reported increase in probationary diversity in our probationary teachers, and we wanted to speak with them. So we spoke with 35 new teachers and to see what recruitment and retention strategies work for them and what is their experience in Portland Public Schools. And so the slide you see here is related to recruiting our HR team, and they're not here today, but I want to acknowledge them for their hard work in developing relationships with our partnerships, as well as going out to job fairs and really just informing candidates of our application and hiring process, and that's what you see here. In the next slide, you also see our percentage this year of new teacher hires at 20% for teachers of color and 80% white, and our which brings up our total teacher workforce diversity from 16% to 17%. All right.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And actually, I will say this is one of the items that we've identified where we're doing ongoing monitoring reports of things that were set in motion in previous years, and then bringing back to the board updates on just what's the status of those things, and we'll be doing these periodically. So this was one of your monitoring reports for tonight's board meeting. And that's the end of our report.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks, Bonnie.
Thank you. Gonna move on now to student testimony. Ms. Houston, is there anybody signing up? Thank you. Student representative report. Student representative Alexia Garcia.
Yeah, so I'd just like to update everyone on what's been going on in the Student Union and the Superintendent Student Advisory Council. So we've had 2 meetings so far with the Student Union, and our first meeting was sort of an introductory meeting to what the Student Union is. And we're still recruiting students, so if there's any students watching or principals that want to send us students' information, they're still welcome to join. And then our second meeting was about the school bond and just educating students on what the school bond is. And we had 2 speakers come in, Shane Endicott and Ted Wolf, who were both on the Long Range Facilities Plan Committee. And Ted talked about earthquake safety and the importance of our schools being earthquake safe. And Shane Endicott talked about the importance of student voice being in the reconstruction process. So that was really cool for students, and then all students were able to share stories about their schools and their, funny stories about their school buildings and the current shape of them. And yeah, so it was just a good instructional time. And then our next meeting will be November 7th, and I think our focus, students want to talk about nutrition, and then probably the teacher evaluation tool that we were working on last year. So, yeah.
So we're going to move on to public comment. Is there anybody signed up for public comment? All right. So makes it easier to move into achievement compacts. Targets. At our last meeting, the board heard an update and held a discussion on our milestones and how they're going to align with the achievement compacts. Tonight, the board will be voting on our revised achievement compact targets. The achievement compact targets are now an annual action item for the board. Superintendent Smith will introduce this item.
And actually, I'll invite Sue Ann Higgins, who's our Chief Academic Officer, and Amanda Whalen, who's Assistant to the Superintendent, to come on up and be available for questions. But truly, the discussion about this item occurred. We had at the last work session where we reviewed what the changes to the targets would be for this year, and then so tonight is for a vote. I don't know if either one of you want to add anything to that before we turn it over to the board for discussion.
Nothing new to add at this time, so just here if you have any questions.
I do have a couple of questions. One is, so thank you for providing the form with all the colors, because it is a lot easier to read with all of the colors. It's a complex and kind of confusing form, but the color coding at least helps a little bit. So I was just wondering why we didn't have any figures for 2011-12 6th grade on track, which is an attendance-based goal, right? It's just attendance and nothing else?
For the 2011-12 data, Mark?
Yeah. It's blank in here, so I just wondered why.
For Joe Suggs, is that
I was
correct?
looking for Joe Suggs. Yeah.
Hi. Sorry, I just grabbed the back to find your place.
Joe, go.
Okay, so could you repeat the question, please?
I was just wondering why we didn't have any data from the last school year on the 6th grade on track, which I believe is an attendance data point, but it's not in here, so I wondered why we wouldn't have it at this point.
I'm not sure. I know the answer to that. Let me think about that one for a minute.
Okay.
Maybe while he's looking at that, I also had a question in terms of local priorities. I thought that we had considered possibly keeping our 7th grade writing priority, because that's not part of the state compact anymore, right?
No, because what went away was the ability to measure it. So the statewide test, in terms of our ability to measure it,
gone away completely,
because
so
they
we
took
can't.
that. We were relying on the statewide measure, but we're working in concert with other districts who want that assessment to be returned. So we're in conversation about returning it.
And did we look at any other kind of local priorities?
Not at this point. Like, one of the conversations we had is whether we would, of the milestones that we'd set, our local priority was basically to use our own targets on our existing milestones. And one conversation we had as a possible was whether or not we would actually separate the 6th grade on track credit-wise from the attendance measure and do them as two separate measures. We ended up adopting the one of the 90% attendance for the moment, and using that as our milestone, just for simplicity's sake of people understanding what we're talking about when we talk about that milestone. So we ended up just setting a higher target than the methodology on the ones that the 3rd grade and the on track credit, 9th grade on track.
And I can return to the previous question. ODE provided most of the data for the Achievement Compacts to districts, including the 6th grade attendance one. They have not updated any data at this point, with the exception of Oaks data for districts. So they did not provide any 11-12 data to the districts. We could calculate something to put in there. It probably wouldn't exactly match ODE's numbers, but it would be close. What we cannot do that ODE does for us is to roll up all of the data into the combined historically underserved group of students, because they unduplicate. That's an unduplicated count. And
so let me just, so we have, I noticed that the goal for that 6th grade on track is the same as the 2010-11 results.
No, so we raised it a percentage point in June. We had kept it
one
the same.
percentage point
Yeah, we
higher.
kept it 1 percentage point higher for 6th grade on track.
Okay, and so you don't have. You're saying you just don't have the data from ODE from 11-12.
Correct. Correct. They have not provided.
So you're looking back 2 years basically.
Yeah. It's kind of circular because we actually give the data to ODE and then they give it back to us,
Right.
but they do their calculations with it. So.
Okay.
So remember the achievement compacts that we received in May had data filled in for primarily the 2010-11 school year. All of the additional data for 11-12 has been added by us using the ODE data for the OAKS test, but this is not, the only things that were filled in by ODE were the 2010-11 data.
And wasn't the issue too around the attendance that we aren't raising it to say 95% or something, just because of the resource that it takes in order to get a significant increase? And I mean, I remember you making that point a number of times, Carol. So we're just, I mean, at a certain point, a lot of this has to be a reflection of the lack of investment at the state level, and there's only so much more that we can do without that investment, particularly around something like increasing attendance significantly.
And I'll say, so this has been a conversation at Cradle to Career also when we're looking at how do our partners interact with the district, and if we're and Cradle to Career partners, where we're looking at the county, we're looking at our Sun schools, we're looking at our nonprofit partners, where some of what their work with us will impact attendance, and so it's in the Cradle to Career set of measures, which will also impact this. That's some of what we're looking at is the collective impact, and the impact of our partners' work with us. But yes, we have not added any additional investment to that will impact directly on attendance.
And isn't some of it the fact that there's not a lot of research that demonstrates that this particular milestone and this particular target is a great indicator of long-term success. It's not that it's not, but there's not as much research as third grade reading, for example, or 10th grade on track as showing whether or not it's an indicator of future success.
We were using it as a risk factor indicator, so like a lagging indicator. So it's one of the things we use to identify students as academic priority before they're moving into high school. And largely that if you're not there, you're not learning and you're more likely to be behind. And actually kindergarten attendance they have shown as being a predictor of attendance the rest of the way through your schooling experience. So there are some places where attendance has been a big impactor. And our argument has just been decoupling it from the academic indicators and look at them separately because they may or may not be connected.
So I had a question that came up the last time, which has to do with the 4-year graduation rate. And we're looking at an increase of 3% rather than what we've traditionally been doing as more of a 5% marker. Can you remind us why we ended up at 3% rather than 5%? And I'm particularly interested in terms of historically underserved, that one's still 3%.
So, and this was part of our discussion at the work session, is that we used the methodology that was part of the white paper that we did with multiple districts that was back mapping from 2025, what it would take for us to get to 2025, and we applied that methodology to all of our data points. The two that we pulled out were the two milestones that we have been setting, the 5-point gain overall, which was our third grade reading, and our on track in the 10th grade. The graduation rate, we actually have not yet, we had not been setting targets yet. We've been reporting it every year, but we had not yet set targets, and it's one that we said that we left at the methodology. The two that we pulled out were the two that we've been doing our own milestones on, to made them consistent with our milestones. And so that is what we did.
So is this 3% goal now a Multnomah County-wide goal? I'm sorry. Is this a Portland Public School goal, or
this achievement?
Is the 3% increase in achievement? Is that what every district in Multnomah County put down as their goal?
We used the methodology, which was the back map, and I may let Amanda do a little more of the detail on the methodology, or Amanda or Joe. But what we did was we established a common methodology for how we would establish it, so it would be different from different districts depending on what your starting place is, because you're back mapping of how do you get from what your current number is to 100% by 2025. So no, everybody wouldn't necessarily be 3%. Is that,
Yeah,
Joe?
The high school indicators, which are at the top, were all based on the 40-40-20, that by 2025 we would have 100% of our students graduating from college. And so we backed up to completing high school.
Yeah.
So we backed up 4 years, well, we backed up to where they entered ninth grade to determine the cohort rate. Because every district is at a different place in their graduation rate, as Superintendent Smith indicated, most districts will have a slightly different one. They're all pretty closely in the ballpark of 3%, but some of them might be 2.5 if they had a slightly higher graduation rate. I'm not aware of who might have a lower grad rate that might have a slightly higher indicator or target.
I think a few of the districts did have lower graduation rate targets, and that was the state sent them back to be revised. So if it was 1% or less, so a number of them had 1% at the time in June.
So I'm concerned about this setting this target in this manner. And when I look at our milestones framework in the front of the book, I mean, our third grade reading to learn is one of our targets. Entering 10th grade on track to graduate is one of our targets, and 12th grade graduating on time is one of our targets. And I think for me as a board member, this is very high priority, our kids graduating on time. And to set a goal at 3% under the methodology rather than setting a goal more consistently with our milestones is really not satisfactory to me. So I appreciate what you're saying, but I can't support that decision to set that as our target. So I'd be in favor of changing the target.
What would you change the target to?
Well, I think we should have a goal of 5 points. I think that's what we've agreed as a district should be our goal. And I don't understand why we would decide to use the methodology in this particular place when we are not doing that consistently. And I don't think that we should reduce the goals for third grade reading or entering 10th grade on time to graduate. But I certainly don't think that we should set our goal that low for our graduating on time.
But at a 5%, we're still not reaching that graduation on time, right? What I'm wondering is, we're looking at a goal based on a formula that says by 2025 we're at 100% graduation. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
So the 5%'s going to get us there earlier.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still not, well, yeah, of course, that's a good thing. But why not 10% more?
Well, we have said in the past a 5% goal, and last year's the first, well, not actually last year, but the results that we have for 2010-11, it did move by 8%. That was significant improvement.
So back at the point that we were picking the 5 percentage point gain and 5% percentage point narrowing of the gap as our targets, what we had done was look at other districts across the country and like Broad prize winners, what was an amount that was both achievable but also a stretch. And so that's where we came up with our 5. And we did it and we had set it on 3 milestones, which were the 3rd grade, the 7th grade writing, and the 10th grade on track. And we hadn't actually set it for the graduation rate yet because we didn't believe that our strategies were going to start to kick in until we had students who'd hit the other milestones. So this past year was, and we have been reporting on it, but we actually hadn't set the target, which is part of why we said we stuck with the 2 that we'd set. We could certainly go ahead and apply the same methodology and do it on the high school graduation rate, and I totally take your point. But that was what our thinking was when we set this. If, in fact, we go back and do that, or you direct us to go back and move this one to the 5%, then we'll go back and recalculate because it will impact all the back sheets on it as well, but we could go back and calculate for what it means to do the 5. But the 5 percentage point was really doable and a stretch is what it was. And we were trying to do a realistic kind of a target that's something that we have a shot at actually achieving, and that it is a bit of a push beyond what would be a standard hope for what kind of you could achieve a year. Speaking to the why not 10%, why not 100%? I mean, it becomes though, okay, how do you do goals that we really are moving us where we want to get to, and that we have the hope of achieving them, but that are pushing us beyond what a normal trajectory would be.
So I'm curious about those back pages and the aggregate of a 3% increase. Is one thing, but what does that look like? And I know this is probably information that you may not have at your fingertips, but what does that look like based on primarily historically underserved communities? Do we have that right here in front of us?
Next page. There you go.
Never mind. I'll come back to that.
While Matt's looking at that, what did the back mapping entail? Is it just taking the percentage and just going back and is that it, or did we look at other things in the back mapping? I'm particularly looking down at the 9th grade on track, being at 75 and 64%, and wondering, are we looking at how that is changing as we move forward? So that, I mean, that's 10%. That's several percentage. Yeah, 10% percentage points higher than the 4-year graduation rate. So I'm just trying to get an idea of what other kinds of things you were looking at, other than just saying, oh, if we want to get to 100% by 2025, then we have to do this percentage each year, or was that it?
So Joe can answer the back mapping question, but the 9th grade on track goal is a 5 percentage point gain. So that is beyond what the methodology would have had us do. So I think that would have had us at 73%, I think, and we added 2 more percentage points to be in line with the way we had set targets for the milestone, because that was this 9th grade on track was what we were counting as the on track to graduate and comparable to our 10th grade on track milestone.
So if you look at the 9th grade on track and it's, 75% and 64%, do you then move that forward to see what it's going to look like 4 years from now when they're actually graduating? I mean, are we looking at, in 4 years, a 75% graduation rate then?
So here's what
that's because at 3% a year, that's just about.
So here's what I think is that I think this will be exactly the kind of conversation that happens with our Achievement Compact Advisory Committee this year. So part of the conversation with the state, this being the first year of doing this, is this becomes our baseline data. And the things that then become unique to a district, like what strategy are you employing, and so what kind of result, like exactly what you're speaking to, Pam, I think would be the kind of conversation, like one of the things we talked about having our Achievement Compact Advisory Committee do is go through the methodology and go through, here are the recommendations and the conversations that were had and figuring out how to tackle this in year 1. But then I think you start getting more district specific of what are the strategies, what kind of things are you expecting are going to come out of our strategies, and make further recommendations about how do we tackle this next year. So that group comes back to you before February 1st this year to say, here are the things we'd tweak about whatever we did this year. And those kind of things I think are exactly what we'd be talking about.
So I guess I come at it from a slightly different perspective, one of really, frankly, not feeling too confident about the state's process, and just given things like the OEIB not showing up for the recent community forum. I think one member showed up, and how incredibly disrespectful that is. And just the way this whole thing has gone in sort of in an absence of investment. So to me, I would prefer to have our more of an internal aggressive, I mean, we are going full steam ahead on increasing the graduation rate, and have that be our internal, and if we want to set a board milestone, superintendent board milestone goal that's more aggressive, then that's great. But I really, to me, frankly, just with my level of distrust in this process and the hoops that the state is putting districts through without providing the investment, and the amount of faith this puts in our legislature, is a hard one for me to swallow. So I would prefer to be more conservative within this flawed framework and the situation that the state is putting us in. Well, I'm just but keep our more aggressive goals as your team and as us at PPS and kind of, and I understand that we also, there's only so many parallel multiple scoring things that we can that you have the capacity to handle, particularly when you keep having to cut your team. But to me, I would be more comfortable with that. I just don't put my faith. I know that we have to do what we have to do, that the state has imposed on us, but I would much rather really have the conversation around what we're doing for kids in a more meaningful arena, which is with us and our immediate district partners. So that's my take on it. So I totally hear what you're saying, but I don't want to have this be the context where we have that more aggressive goal.
And I think that's what I tried to kind of say at the last meeting, which is that I'd like us to have another goal that is internal and more aggressive, being the 5%, I would hope, at least for the graduation rate. And so I was hoping that we would maybe identify that within our resolution.
Like in our milestones, or meaning on here?
I'm not sure I care as much whether it's in the state one. What I do care about is that we set in stone and publicly say, this is our real goal.
For our milestones.
Yeah, and right now that's not in our resolution. So I'm not sure that I can vote yes on what's here in this achievement compact unless we have something in our resolution that kind of sets in stone that we are shooting for more than this, and that we do have a stretch goal, and that's what we are committing to try to get to.
And heck, I could vote no just because I don't believe the state's going to really invest in education. I mean, seriously, we could have a split vote on this because they're presenting something to us that is flawed on so many levels. So.
So, I mean, I look at all of the work. So, I mean, one of the biggest concerns I have about this too is that it's not just the 3% for graduation, but it's when we look at our historically underserved rate and only having a 3% goal there. I mean, one of the things that we have done over the years is we've had our goal, and then we've had our kind of narrowing of the gap goal, and that's not reflected in here at all, which is even a bigger concern to me. So I guess I'm much more comfortable with the way we've been doing it than the way this is presented here, and this doesn't feel like the kind of stretch that our community expects of us, and that we have expect of ourselves.
Director
so that's
Regan,
why I'm struggling with it.
Can somebody speak to that? Because I remember that coming up in one of our earlier conversations about it, and that this historically underserved number is very different than the one we've been using. So can somebody talk about how it's an aggregate and who's all included in that, and why it doesn't make sense to still speak about it as a 5% gain and a 5% closing of the gap? Because I remember being concerned about that.
You're asking for the definition of historically underserved, I think, if I'm hearing you.
That's part of it, and can you talk a little bit about how it's different about, how the number is different compared to what we're using last year?
Excuse me. I think largely because this is now a statewide achievement compact and we have a lot of smaller districts across the state, there's a desire to be able to reflect the historically underserved students. And because of the small cell size, if they're able to roll that up to a new category, then a lot of districts can at least include them at some level in their data. And so the definition now is that group includes special ed students, ELL students, free reduced meal eligibility students, and then the historically underserved racial ethnic groups, African Americans, Hispanic, Native American, Pacific Islander, and I think that's it. Multi is not included.
Multi is not
currently
included. Asian isn't included.
Yeah. And so they're rolled up together, and that's an unduplicated count. So if students appear in more than one of those categories, they're only counted one time. That, of course, is different from what we've done with our milestones, is to present the data for all of at least the racial ethnic groups. We haven't recently done it for the other the demographic groups of students, and then we've talked about the largest gap between white students and the lowest performing racial ethnic group.
The other thing that we don't get as part of the compacts are the data for white students, so it's not called out separately. So our ability to measure the gap in that way, we can't.
So that goes back to my earlier comment about ODE providing the data. They are removing the duplicates and doing some stuff to it that sometimes we're able to do, sometimes we're not. So it's not entirely under our control whether we can pop in the numbers, for example, for 6th grade attendance that are missing, and be confident that it would match something that ODE produces.
So would we still be continuing, for our milestones, we would continue to disaggregate and report the way we have been doing it. So we have, the double effort is there anyway, is that?
We're going to keep doing our milestones, how we've been doing our we're trying to make this match and use the same language and the same measures so we're not confusing, but we're going to still do our 5-point overall and 5-point narrowing of the gap. And responding to Director Regan's comment, I'm wondering whether or not we would want to do a separate resolution that is affirming our milestone targets for the coming year and not mix it up with the Achievement Compact, but do, like, direct us to prepare a resolution that is saying the 5-point gain, 5-point narrowing of the gap, and include the graduation rate in that. So that we're then calling out those three and affirming, putting a stake in the ground that this is our expectation of our milestones in the coming year. But keep this as one document that is our thing with the state, and that we're then setting our own. And again, we were really saying we want to be able to measure these progress in this way over time, and we're going to keep those targets until we get there. Which I feel like we've been really persistent in that statement, and affirming that with a resolution would be a good thing.
I think that sounds great. I mean, I am eager and excited to become less cranky with the state once they actually follow through and provide some investment and show that they're actually interested in true reform. But until that point, to me, this is a compliance thing that I feel very bad that staff is having to devote so much frickin' time to, pardon me. But anyway, so I like that decoupling, so I think that would be great, because I definitely want to have a more vigorous and meaningful, and I know you guys can come up with, well, we have it. We have our milestones and the very simple, clear chart and goals within those. So I think that's the way to go, and have this just be this piece that we have to do for the state.
So just wanted to check, I mean, because usually we have the discussion after the resolution has already been introduced, but wanted to, because there were some questions, I think wanted to make sure that we got those out of the way. But I think, Superintendent Smith, I mean, I think I was going to touch back in regards to the process, because in some ways, I mean, I think this is, in essence, I think part of the compliance that we're trying to do with the state, and I think the resolution in regards to voting, whether people are comfortable voting for it or not, I mean, I think, or making that statement, as you state, whether adequately funded or the goals not being high enough, but also I think questioning in regards to the methodology. I think that would definitely keep us from voting one way or another. That's, to me, I think, important. The other part is also as important, I think, is making sure that whatever process that we have embarked on for the past few years and those targets that we set, that we reaffirm those targets in a way, but not to necessarily mix them up at this point in time.
Agree.
But sooner rather than later, to reaffirm those, to set, I think I think Director Sargent has mentioned, I think more, and I think Director Morton, even more so, is more. I guess higher targets in that sense, and more a communicating, I think, the urgency of us getting to a higher level, sooner than 2025. I think will be important, I think, for us as a district to make. And I think that in terms of the milestones, I think is getting us in that process. But perhaps we haven't communicated as clearly to the public and stuff, and then we can engage, I think, with the state on this other oil component, particularly if there is a difference in regards to which students are being counted and in which way, and if the data is not disaggregated in a way that says, okay, the achievement gap and the closing the gap is also with particular groups and trying to bring those up and setting those goals, which is not necessarily something that the state is doing, at least not on my reading of this document. And that we can say if they can set, closing the gap also as part of that. I don't know if that's, I was trying to see how we're going to move this thing, and one of the ways that we can move is by introducing the resolution, so, and then figuring out whether there's going to be amendments to that resolutions or some other things. But I would like to consider a motion to introduce this resolution 4671, a resolution to revise 2012-13 Achievement Compact targets. Do I have a motion and a second? Director Knowles moves and Director Atkins seconds the motion to adopt Resolution 4671. Is there any public comment on this resolution? So let's continue with the discussion and see what we want to do with this
So could I suggest a possible amendment that perhaps we could ask our general counsel to write up as we're talking? But if we did on the resolution part, this is on page 20, the resolution itself. If we added under the resolution, either a number 3 or a number 2 that said something like the Board of Education directs the superintendent to develop milestone targets that continue to reflect a 5-point gain and again, however we would word it, in achievement and a 5-point narrowing of the gap for use as an internal milestone to ensure, to reflect the fact that we plan to continue to use that as our target, something like that. Would that be a possibility?
So can I offer another thought on this one? My vision was to do 2 separate things. One, where we keep the achievement compact pretty clean, that's our compliance relationship with the state, and this is the resolution with whatever we're saying our targets are in that. And then a second thing that is our own internal, that is a resolution that we bring back to you, that is here are the targets we're setting on our milestones for the next year. But doing something in this one that's approving a document with one set of numbers, but then doing a backup statement in it that's a different set of numbers, feels like we're muddying the water between the two. So I would just think do two separate things would be my thought. I get wanting them at the same moment as you're doing it, because we're making clear we're setting our own internal target.
I'll just say from my point of view, saying that we're going to have a separate target, which is for the exact same data point, doesn't make any sense to me. I think we should keep our milestones framework and the way that we talk about, particularly the way we talk about decreasing the gap. But why we would we'd set a target here and then set a separate target, it doesn't make sense to me. So from my point of view, the board is supposed to be adopting these as our targets, and even in light of the frustration of all the time and energy we're spending on figuring this stuff out, I can't support this target. And I think it's just a critical target that our district and our board are trying to move, and this is not satisfying to me. So if you want to leave it that way, then that's fine. But I can't support it.
Yeah, I totally get why you couldn't support it, but I don't support the way the state is doing the achievement compacts. So.
But this is the same exact goal we're talking about. There's nothing different about it.
It's within the context of how they're framing it, how they're conducting the whole process, and it's bordering on illegitimate to me. I mean, we'll see what happens with the legislative session. So to me, it's just to me the genuine reform, the genuine change is going to happen with us and our milestones and the work that Carol's doing with other districts, not in the context of the Achievement Compact. Maybe that'll change. Maybe that'll miraculously become something meaningful, but it's not to me. So I totally get and respect that you would want to vote no on this and can vote no on it, but this isn't meaningful to me, and it's.
So here's what I'll tell you too. I'm fine having it say moving this to the 5 and match our milestones also. So this one's really, and this is exactly the conversation I think would have been our work session conversation that would have sent us back to come back to you with a finished document this time, because because it'll recalculate everything on the whole document if we go back and change them, which we will do, but then I think we're coming back to you again at another meeting where you're looking at it again, as opposed to on, so, like, if we decide we want to do that, then send us back, and I think we're coming back and bringing you back a new document.
So I have two questions. Is there a deadline for this, where it's due? And second, if we set goals, I mean, what happens when districts don't make their goals?
That's what we don't know the answer to yet. This was part of why we were saying we were doing conservative on a compliance document and setting goals as a thing. We don't know the answer to that yet, and they don't know the answer to that yet. So it's part of how we're evolving. Yes, Amanda.
And in terms of your first question, we set that goal. So back in June, we in our resolution, we stated that we would resubmit in October. When the state sent back achievement compacts, they asked for revised targets, I think October 15th. So,
and we said we'd already planned for this meeting to be our approval moment.
Right. Yeah. Did they send ours back, or were
no,
they satisfied
didn't.
with ours?
Well, we had said that we would be revising our targets based on most recent data, so they understood that we would be doing this.
We claimed that at the front end, so we didn't get asked to do it because we'd already said we were going to do that.
Well, and Director Sargent, I guess I appreciate your comment about it doesn't make sense to set two targets, which is actually my biggest concern, is that now we're tracking milestone data and now we're tracking achievement compact. We don't get to define these, like how we do these numbers. We get to define our milestones, which is why I think it's important that we continue to track that. But I don't get to go to the state and say, well, we like our achievement, our milestones better, so we're going to just use that. And because the numbers are significant, calculated differently enough, I'm less excited about changing these numbers to match our milestones.
Well, the graduation data isn't. I mean, the historically underserved figures are, but the graduation data is not.
But it also feels a little bit strange to say, okay, well, we'll just take we'll take our ninth graders and just raise that 5%, and we're not sure what to do with the historically underserved when specifically we are trying to close that gap.
Absolutely.
And so we don't have that data historically, and so it feels weird to move one up and then let the historically underserved stay the same. How much does it change? And I guess I appreciate what Director Adkins is saying, is that we're just not sure the consequence. We're building this plane. The state, quite admittedly, is building this plane as we're flying it. And so I think it's good to be thoughtful about the process. And I don't hear unthoughtful comments. But jumping to a higher number when I think that we have a mechanism. I actually, again, worry about setting two targets because, one, I think our community that's not paying that close of attention is going to get confused. Your milestone, your compact achievement. The second piece is that it actually adds bureaucratic central office time to run two separate sets of numbers and to try to figure it out when we're in an environment where everybody says cut central administration. And so adding these pieces concerns me. At the same time, it's the only way we know if we're going to make progress.
So I think there's a real difference between a compliance document, which is what the achievement compacts are, and our strategic drivers of how we're driving our work, which is our milestones. So like I think that's the way I can think of it, and we're not like we're going to drive our work to accomplish our milestones because that's what we've been using to drive our work. And we're going to be held accountable from the state with the Achievement Compact. It's our compliance document with the state, and like I can do either one on this if you believe that you want to reflect both, and you want those two to be consistent. But they're two different kinds of statements that we're making, and one is one that we're using to drive strategically, and the other is compliance.
And what I was hearing is that the district, Carol's going to be doing, and her team are going to be doing both anyway.
We are doing both anyway.
So it's not like we could save, abandon one or the other of the either the milestones calculations or all this form here. So we're going to be doing it anyway, and we can choose if we choose, and I hope we will choose a more aggressive target for our milestones, maybe a really aggressive. Who knows? We can have that discussion. That's what we focus on with the community, and until such time as this becomes more meaningful at the state level, then yeah, it's a compliance piece, but it's not, I would like to hear what they have to say about how they're going to make this meaningful, but we can talk a lot ourselves and really put that focus on the milestones piece. So I guess, obviously, I don't have any problem with it being a separated thing, and I'd rather I'd rather be more thoughtful about the milestones and have that be a separate piece from this.
Yeah, I think with me, I can comments from Director Sargent and Director Regan resonate with me because I haven't been satisfied with our graduation numbers for a long time, and I think probably a number of us can say that too. On the other hand, comments around this being a compliance document actually makes a lot of sense too, because this is probably one document of hundreds, roughly, that we have to provide, all asking for different numbers depending on the funding source, depending on the jurisdiction. Sort of welcome to working with government jurisdictions, but none of them have really any relationship or bearing on our milestones and what our sort of strategic goal is with this district. That is the aspirational goal. That is the stretch goal. And I think that, to echo what you were saying, Director Atkins, I think that is what we need to really be focusing our time on. A compliance document like this because right now we have no indication that this is anything more than that. But a compliance document like this, I think, is something that we need to provide, just as we provide every other statistical piece of information to other funders, like the state in this case. So I would be in support of how it is written. I think it's nowhere near a document that we should be satisfied with, but I think we've already established that we're pretty unsatisfied with our graduation rates and pretty unsatisfied with our achievement gap, and that's why we're focusing our efforts and our resources into those particular pieces. I also want to quickly say too, and this is just blaring to me, we're always going to run up against too few resources, and the fact that even with this quality educational model at the front part of this compact, clearly stating that the next year's budget is looking at over $100 million less than what we would need to be able to achieve it, really speaks to the tenacity of this district to get things done with a lot less. So I wanted to mention that because I know you had commented on creating goals that were achievable and what we could accomplish based on the resources available. So.
And stretch. So I think we're doing ones that are achievable, but that also are a stretch goal, which is what our milestones are meant to be. They're not just like, okay, by normally doing business, same old, you get there. They're all ones that stretch us, so, which I think we want.
And one of our big problems is that we don't understand what the consequences are going to be of this. And clearly it would seem that any of this should be stretch goals and that the state would be supporting us in trying to do stretch goals, but they're not giving us any support at this point that we can tell at all. So, yeah, I will happily support our milestone work and help in any way I can in crafting or doing whatever we need to do with that. But I can't live with this document.
So
That's fine.
you just want to have one conversation.
Sorry.
Is that correct? My sense, I think that there are some concerns in regards to the document, in regards to the whole question of compliance, and also in regards to the targets that are visible, at least in terms of this document. Nonetheless, there is, at least I didn't hear a majority of the folks expressing a wanting to change the targets on this thing today. But also I think that there is an interest, I think, in regards to the whole milestones and making sure that we have something much more visible, again, not necessarily attached to this thing today. So rather than continue the discussion in regards to this, I think that I would like to call for a vote on this resolution 4671 at this point, understanding that the vote doesn't speak necessarily to the work that the staff has done in regards to this document, nor to to the intent in regards to this thing for us to increase, at a higher rates, graduation rates, but to be conscious in regards to that this being a compliance document, this also being a document in which is a starting document, I think, at least in our relationship within this new framework with the district, and in one in which putting things in writing, in particular when there is not known in regards to what are the consequences of how these things are going to be evaluated, I think is troublesome, at least from what I heard from some of the comments. So, having said that, I think we are hoping that staff will come back with, again, whether it's a resolution or a discussion in which we can reaffirm, I think, our commitment to increase those higher graduation rates at a higher pace will be important. So the board will now vote on resolution 4671. All in favor, please indicate by saying yes.
Yes.
All opposed, please indicate by saying no.
No.
Resolution 4671 is approved by a vote of 4-3, with Student Representative Garcia voting.
No.
Thank you. Again, as you can see, there are some concerns, and so we hope to continue this discussion. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you very much.
The board will now consider the remaining items on its business agenda, having already voted on resolution 4671. Ms. Houston, are there any changes to the business agenda? Do I have a motion, a second, to adopt the business agenda?
So moved.
Director
Second.
Reagan moves and Director Sargent seconds the adoption of the business agenda. Is there no citizen comment, you said, right? So the board will now vote on, is there any board discussion on the business agenda? The board now will vote on the business agenda. All in favor, please indicate by saying yes.
Yes.
All opposed, please indicate by saying no. The business agenda is approval by a vote of 7-0, with Student Representative Garcia voting. The next meeting of the board will be held on November 5th, 2012 at 6 p.m. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.